Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching A Healthcare Z. Today's topic is the number one reason why employer-sponsored plans do not change. So, many of you who watch these videos are wanting to change healthcare for the better. You want to improve quality, you want to decrease costs, you want to improve access for patients. You sincerely care about people. And healthcare is incredibly difficult to change, especially employer-sponsored healthcare is incredibly difficult to change. One of my favorite quotes about change is, "Pain causes change," from Stephen Covey of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People fame. Okay, so that means that without pain, there is no change. So, I was looking through the Kaiser Family Employee Benefits Survey, like many of you have read, and this particular statistic just hit me right between the eyes. Employers are incredibly satisfied. Employers really don't have pain. Look at this. 87% of the employers they survey, and this is the HR people, they're satisfied with the quality of the providers in their health plan. 88% of the HR people at the employers that they survey are satisfied with access for their plan members to the providers, doctors, hospitals, etc. Okay, 66%, 2/3, well over half, are actually satisfied with the cost. 76% are satisfied with engagement. 82% are satisfied with access to primary care. Look, these are anonymous surveys. Look, when you talk about the people who run benefits for companies in America, they're largely satisfied. Like, they're not unhappy. So, myself included, where I was like, oh, healthcare is terrible. People, listen, for the people that actually control the budgetary decisions and like control healthcare for employer-sponsored plans, they're largely satisfied, which is why they keep their carrier, which is why they keep their PBM, which is why they keep their broker consultant. They don't change. Okay, so if you're satisfied, what are you going to change? Okay, so, and part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because there have been in the news recently about all these different healthcare startups that are trying to disrupt healthcare. They failed. Well, no kidding, they failed. If you have a largely satisfied market that doesn't want change, of course you're going to fail. Now, of course, I'm being a little facetious here because all markets, to a certain extent, follow the technology adoption lifecycle, which I've outlined here, which has the early adopters, the pragmatists, the conservatives, and the skeptics, where you have the number of people on the y-axis, right? So it's a bell-shaped curve. So you essentially have 17% of the population that's early adopters, 33% that's pragmatists, 33% that's conservatives, and 17% that are skeptics. The early adopters are the first movers. The skeptics are like, I'm never going to change no matter what. The pragmatists are heavily influenced by a herd mentality. In other words, they'll do it if they can see somebody else doing it first. And the conservatives, they'll only do it if it's super low cost and it's already kind of baked into what they already have, a la their carrier or their broker, blah, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so, and listen, I've experienced this. This is not theoretical, okay? So I ran marketing and sales and account management for Compass, and I have been in literally hundreds, if not thousands of these meetings. And so I've literally seen this with employers, with HR and the CFO and the broker consultant and the benefits manager and the carrier rep, and, you know, I've been in those meetings. I literally have seen the early adopters, the pragmatists and the conservatives and the skeptics. Like, I've seen how all this plays out in real life. Okay, now typically those early adopters have a mission and a vision. In other words, they're not satisfied, right? Because they have a vision for how they want things to be. Now, most people who work in employee benefits, they don't have a vision, okay? They're reactive. Pragmatists are reactive. Conservatives are reactive. Skeptics are reactive, and they won't even do anything, okay? So the vast majority of the time, everybody's reactive, and they're largely satisfied. So the only people that are proactive are the early adopters. Okay, so, and listen, if there's a problem with your health plan, like, one of the first things that they're going to change is going to be their broker consultant, right? Because they're used to swapping out certain things, right? And like, oh, the health plan's not going well, I'm just going to swap out my consultant. Okay, listen, I talked to the president of one of the largest brokerage consulting firms in the country almost like 2 months ago that we had lunch, and he said, look, 95% of employers keep their broker, even if their broker's doing a bad job, or they keep their benefits consultant, even if their benefits consultant's doing a bad job. So like, it is like, even in the consulting in the brokerage world, like they don't really change all that often. Okay, so that's fine. Where have I seen change? Okay, so if you are going to change, because certainly we accomplished this at Compass, there are many other companies that have actually accomplished this, but the way that they did it was they identified these early adopters, but that wasn't enough. Those early adopters had to, because there's a buying committee, if you will. And so the entire organization needs to also kind of have these three circles overlap, right? So they have to be typically a self-funded organization. They have to have some sort of money or budgetary problem, like, sales are down or tax revenues are down if it's a municipality. And then there also typically needs to be some sort of bureaucratic executive change at the top, whether it be a new head of HR, a new head of benefits, a new CFO, a new CEO, or some sort of combination of just new people at the top. So even if you have an early adopter in the head of benefits, etc., they need to have these other three aspects to the soil in order for them to plant change, in order for it to grow. Okay, and even that is not enough. On top of that, the organization, the startup, the technology company, the technology enabled services company, the disruptor, like we did at Compass, they have to have a hyper-polished sales founder. I have never seen a company in digital health succeed without a hyper-polished sales founder. Now, I'm not saying I'm hyper polished, but I was one of the few physicians who was out there pounding the pavement, carrying a bag, doing this, right? So I kind of stuck out just because I was a doctor who was doing it. But unless you have, and what's the test for this? How do you know if you found a hyper polished sales founder? I call it the they could sell ice to Eskimos test, right? So whenever you're meeting these people, it's like, okay, at the end of the day, they just need to be a really good salesman. And believe me, there are digital health companies that have been hugely successful because they had a hyper-polished sales founder who could sell ice to Eskimos, right? Because even if you have an early adopter, there's a buying committee at the organization. And that buying committee has an outcome buyer, which is like the head of HR. It has an economic buyer, which is the CFO. And it has the technical buyer, which is like the head of payroll and the benefits managers and the brokers who are actually going to be implementing all this stuff. And so that hyper-polished sales executive also needs to be able to sell ice to Eskimos for all these people as well, because believe me, they do not want to change. That's like the last thing that they want to do. Okay, here is really the punchline of this video. Everything that I have talked about here is about sales and market segmentation and marketing. It has not been at all about the product. So many people and individuals and companies that are in digital health and startups are so focused on their mousetrap. They're so focused on their value proposition. And I would argue that that is actually not the key to success. I would actually place the product and the value proposition as a distant second. I have seen gobs of awesome value propositions and awesome mousetraps fail because they didn't do this. They didn't segment the market. They didn't identify the early adopters. They didn't identify the overlap of these three circles. They didn't have a hyper-polished sales founder. If you don't do this and you literally have a solution that saves people's lives and saves money, it will fail. Like, it will not work. You can, like in consumer businesses, you can have a fantastic product and it will work. But in the complex sales and distribution world of business-to-business healthcare sales, it will not work unless you can navigate why employer-sponsored plans don't change. And that's my point for today. Thank you for watching A Healthcare Z.